All right, welcome back. So I left the last video on a bit of a cliffhanger just because of the amount of time that it had taken to get to that point. Where we're at on this is we're going to start by loading in the languages, and we're going to do a quick count to see if there are more than two. So I'm going to make this its own method to start with. So it'll be a private method. We don't really need to have anything returned from this. So we'll have a void, and let's just call this load languages. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create an error check variable. And what this will do is it will see if we've gotten to a fail state. So I'm actually going to call it that. So fail state, and we'll start off with it being false. So if we hit the fail state at any point, then we will put back an error saying we cannot continue. And this isn't an actual like syntax error or anything like that. So it's not going to work if we put it into a try statement. So this is one that we're going to keep track of on our own. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the exact same thing that we've done in form 1, coming back to form 1 here, when we start this section here. So we're going to read in and load the file and go from there. So let's go back to where we're doing our lexicon here. And we're going to start off by getting ourselves a string of file name. And that is going to be the form1 base path and then the form1.language file. This will give us the actual name of the file that we're going to be opening. And of course, the very first thing that we can do is we can check if the file exists. Now, if the file does not exist, then we can already put in our fail state. Let me spell this correctly. Fail state equals true. So if the file doesn't exist, we're going to shoot out an error message at this point. And let's just go ahead and handle this. So we're just going to say if fail state is true, then what we're going to do is put a message box, and we're going to show, and we're just going to say at least 2 languages must be created before you can use the lexicon object. And we'll give that a title of error. And then once that's done, we can just do the this.dialog result, and we're going to set that to dialog result dot cancel. So we'll send back the message that this was canceled. So that's the first step. But if the file does exist, then we're going to need to load the data. And to load the data, again, we do the string file contents. And that's going to be the form1 load data, and that's going to be the file name that we're loading. So put that in. And then, of course, it's going to break it into the array file rows. And that's going to be the file contents that we just created, split with the form1 line separator. So we've got this in place. Now, here's the thing about this content here, this step. As you can see, this happens a lot. So if I come back to form 1 again, it's the same thing that we're doing with this line here, basically. So this line and this line together. So because this same thing happens multiple times, this is a good candidate for where we can take this data out and make it into its own thing, its own method. So these two are going to happen frequently. So let's just go ahead and make them their own function. We'll put it down here. And this is going to be a private for now. We'll probably make this public later so that we can use this elsewhere. And it's going to return a string that's an array when we come back, because we're going to have it return this portion here. This is what we want to have it return, and we're just going to shortcut everything. So it's going to return that. So let's just call this get line separation. And we're going to need to put in the file name. We put like this. So when this comes in, we're again going to use the file name to load the data. So we're going to do form1 load data file name. So this part is going to go in there. And of course, we'll need to assign this to a variable. So string file contents is set to this. So we'll load the file contents. And then we're going to do a string, and it's going to be called return lines. And that is going to be this file contents split from form1 line separator. And did I spell that correctly? I did not. Let me correct that. Oh, and we also need to include that at the front. So once we do that, we can return those lines. So this shortens what we're going to do. Now, unfortunately, we can't do a lot more than this in the specific get line separation because the different objects that we're going to be using are going to handle the next lines differently. But this will help to make it where we don't have to put in all of those here. So we can just take this out. We can take this part and change this to get line separation file name, like so. And now we've got our file rows. And we can do this for the language file here when we create the language file. We can do it for the associations that we're going to be making later with the lexicon. We can do it for individual words. So because we're going to be using this so frequently and this portion of it never changes, then having this available function is actually really worthwhile to have. So when this comes back, the first thing we need to do is make sure that the count is correct. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say if file rows dot count is less than or equal to 2, then fail state is going to be true again. So this is what we use to ensure sufficient number of languages. So we'll say make sure that we have at least 2 unique languages to load. Okay. So if there is exactly 2, the count will come back saying that there's 3, because if you remember, the very last character that we're putting in is the separation, the line separator variable. So it will have that at the very end with a null set for the very last one. So we're ignoring that last one. Once we got these languages, and let me get to the right spot, then we can actually continue and we can load them. And of course, at this point, we can just do the normal for int I equals 0, I is less than the file rows dot length. And again, we do the length -1 because of that same principle of that extra character that we're ignoring at the very, very end. Then at this point, we can now split this into more characters. Or we just do the same string of file fields is going to be the file row at index 1 or index I dot split. And this time we're going to be using the form1 with the field separator coming through. We are going to need to save this information. And where we want to save it is in a temporary field to begin with. So we're going to do a temporary language item. And so we'll just call this the temp language. And that's going to be a new language item. But we're going to store all of these into a full public up here. So let's go ahead and do a list of language up here. And we can call this one all languages. And it's going to be a new list of languages. So what we'll do is we'll take this, we'll make a temporary thing, and we'll add it into here. So to start with that, we just need to start grabbing the variables. So temp language.id is going to be the first one. And again, remember, when we're loading from a file, it's always a string and we have to convert it. So it's going to be a long, and we're going to parse with the, I thought it had the right IntelliSense, but it changed it. So it's going to be the file field of 0. So that's the first thing. And of course, file fields plural of 0. And it does help if I spell that correctly up here. So file fields. There we go. After that, we're going to need the temp language.language name. That's going to be a string, so we can just pull this through. And then, of course, don't forget that the temp language.right to left, which is going to be a Boolean, so we have to convert to Boolean, and that's going to be the file fields 2 section. So we can load all of this information into that temporary value. And then, of course, we're going to need to add this to the all languages. So we're going to add in the temp language value we just created. And this will give us the list of everything that we're going to want to have while we look later on. I want to do one other thing while we're doing this. So strictly speaking, this next thing that I'm going to show you while we're going through this loop is not necessary, because we can always come and pull this out later. But it's going to be useful if we have a dictionary object. Dictionaries have a key, and then they have an entry that goes in with it. So basically you have a key that's an index, and then you have your entries that follow with it. The key has to be unique. It's just like if you have a dictionary, you look up the word in the dictionary, and the definition can be multiple things. You can have more than one definition. But in this case, we're just going to use it for a one-to-one correlation. So we're going to start with our dictionary. Now, the dictionary needs to have keys and values. Our key is going to be a long, and the value is going to be a string. So we'll set it up this way. And this is going to be the index, or let's call this dictionary of language IDs, is a new dictionary for the long and the string. What this will allow us to do is we are storing the data as a long, and we're going to need to reference the actual name. And rather than have to loop through all of these again later, we can just look it up in here using the key. So with that in mind, what we can do here is we can say that dictionary of language IDs dot add is going to be adding in the temp language .id, and then we're going to add in the temp language name. And you'll see how I'm going to use this later on as we continue. But this will load all the data that we're looking for. So after we've got this part here, what we do is we say load languages, and we just run that method. Now, if I ran this right now and it succeeded, then there wouldn't be much to show for it. So what's the next thing that we're going to need to do after this is we want to display the languages in a combo box. So to do that, let's do another method down here, and we can put it after this, and we're going to do a private. And this can be a void, and it's just going to be update combo box entries, like so. What we'll want to do is we'll actually loop through using the all languages. You could probably use the dictionary. It might be a little more difficult to get it from here. The dictionary is actually going to be used from when we read the file later on and when we're storing the linking. So pretend for now the dictionary does not exist. What we're going to do here is we need to update the combo boxes. So first, we want the target language, and we want to clear the items. Next, we want the lexicon, and we're going to do that same thing. So we're going to clear out any items. So whenever we call this, we want to start with fresh boxes. We want everything cleared out. And then we just do our normal for int I equals 0, I is less than all languages count. And then we do I++. I don't know why IntelliSense is being mean to me today, but there we go. And, oh, I put this in as an if. That's why it's not working. So this needs to be a 4. There you go. I'm like, that's why the IntelliSense was being wonky. You do have to use the correct statement at the front. And let me go ahead and put that onto the correct line. So what we're going to do is let's put in the C box, and we'll start with the target languages just because that's the first one that came in. We're going to do items, and we're actually going to do add. And we're going to add in this all languages of the index I. So we're going to be putting that in. And then we're going to repeat the same thing with the lexicon languages, items.add all languages, I. And specifically, it is going to be the language name, and we're going to put that to string. So we do need to include this part, language name to string. And I always have to double check here if I spelled everything correctly, because after a while, language is very difficult to spell. So we'll loop through all of those. And then once this is done at the very end, just to kind of help people out a little bit, what I'm going to do is put in let's do the lexicon. We're going to type the word sorted, and we're going to say equals true. And then I'm not going to sort the other one, just to show really quick what the difference is, and then I will sort it. But let's go ahead and come in here. And there might not be a difference when we load it. It depends on how things were added. So we'll select this. Right now, there should be more than one, or there should be two languages in here. And there is, but why is that not populating? Oh, I know why, because we didn't call it. So we need to come up here, update the ComboBox entries. Now we save it and run it. So now it knows what to do with this. So once again, we'll pull this across, select that user, come up, go to the lexicon, we'll come up. And now you can see English and Spanish exist, and it's English and Spanish for both right now. But let me close out, and let's see what happens if I add in another language. And let's add in Arabic. And in fact, we're going to check that the language is right to left. We're going to create that. And you can see that this is in English, Spanish, Arabic here. It's not sorted on this one. We're going to fix that later too. If I come in to manage the lexicon now, and we come over here, and you see this is sorted, Arabic, English, Spanish. It's alphabetical. But this one, not sorted, is exactly how the other one is. So we want to sort it because when you're doing a drop-down menu, it's a lot easier to find the data you're looking for. So that's why we put that sorted in. We'll come back down here and do CBox target language, and we're going to do sorted, and we're just going to say that is true as well. And this will sort the combo boxes for us. And then while we're at it, let me go ahead and go to, this is where we cleared out. It goes through and we finish with this. So I think right here, lbox languages.sorted equals true. This is probably a good spot to put it. Let's see if this works to clear that up in here. And we'll probably want to do the same thing with this user. I'm not going to spend time on doing that bit yet, but let's see. Now, yep, when we come in here, now this is sorted alphabetically as well. So that's just a quick little thing to help everything look better. Let's get back to our class here. So now we've loaded in and we've got the data in the combo boxes. What is the next step? Let's go ahead and look at the design again. And you can see after we select the language, we're going to need to be able to search for and look at the lexicon words on this side. The problem is words don't exist yet. So the next step that we're going to do is we're going to go over to manage the words, and we will start working on this. And that is going to be in our next video.